Well, thank you very much for the introduction, Nick. So yeah, alongside me, I have Pete Bartlett and Mel Ross, and I'll hand over to Mel to introduce herself, and then to Pete to introduce the project and what it's all about.
Thanks, Tom. So, hi everybody. Really excited to be here today, actually. So it's been a while since I've done one of these. So yeah, thanks, Nick, for the opportunity. It's great. My name's Mel. I work with a company called Adapter Digital, as you've all just heard. Who are we? We're an organisation that specialise in human and social systems transformation. So we work alongside anything to do with digital transformation and digital change, predominantly in public sector, but we also work private sector as well, and we're international. But we help really bring that human factor into play. So we do that in a couple of ways. We bridge the gap between leaders and digital transformation to get them more kind of active. We work with practitioners of change, so project management people, IT, learning and development, OD, etc., and service redesign and all of that to help them understand their own leadership capability and to be able to drive role models around change, and then digital and data literacy. So we've been working with Dorset Council now for around about a year, and we've been doing some really, really exciting work. And I think the work that we're going to be hopefully sharing with you today is really, really exciting, which I guess is my segue into introducing Pete from Dorset Council.
Thank you, Mel. Yes, I'm Pete Bartlett. I'm a digital and change business partner for Dorset Council. And as Mel said, yeah, we've been working together with Mel and Adapter Digital and our NHS colleagues for some time around our sort of future leadership program for the modern leaders that we want for the future. So I just want to give you a quick overview of this session, what we kind of get out of it. And as Nick has said, if you want to ask questions, pop in the chat, raise your hand, wave, shout, come off mute, get involved. There's deliberately no slide content for this session. We want this to be an interactive session. So sorry if you wanted to come and eat your lunch quietly. We want you involved in this as well. So this is really going to be a conversation between myself, Mel, and you guys, and then we're going to have a demo from Tom of the minimum viable product we have got to in terms of the endpoint of our journey. And that journey really started, I suppose, if you go back to the pandemic first starting. That journey we've all been on, the virtual world, and now the move to hybrid, and the realization that hybrid world needed some support, and we tried to find out what that support was, and that's where we've got to really. So that's what we're going to try and take you on, is that journey, and to get to that minimum viable product. But before that, I just wanted to sort of set the scene a little bit really for everyone here who may or may not know Dorset very well. So Dorset is a county on the south coast, sandwiched between Devon and Hampshire. It's about 375,000 people. It's got a slightly more elderly than average population demographics. Dorset Council itself is an organisation of about just over 4,500 employees, and our digital and change service, which I'm very proudly part of, was formed shortly after we formed as a council. So the digital and change service started in January 2020, and the organisation itself was formed in April 2019 from the previous legacy councils of the districts and county council. So sorry, I just also explain, I sit very close to my screen, so most people just get to see the top of my head, unfortunately, because I'm actually registered blind. So which is a benefit, I suppose. I'm told it's my best side. But anyway, when the council first formed back in 2019, we very consciously became co-signatories of the digital declaration for local government, because we felt that stood us in very good stead as a predominantly rural council to try and embrace our uniqueness and take things forward. So throughout the pandemic, we used our employee engagement tools and surveys, and we use Hive as a sort of a pulse survey method to really gauge how things were going when people first started working virtually. And and that virtual move was very rapid, as everyone will know. You know, we went from an organisation essentially as an office-based group to 2,500 people working from home using Teams. You know, when we first, I remember my first one-to-one with my line manager was talking about we needed to roll out Microsoft Teams. I started in January 2020, and my first one-to-one was the end of the month in February 2020. And then the pandemic hit. I went actually off on paternity leave as my daughter was born. And when I came back in April 2020, obviously everybody was working from home and everyone was using Teams. It was great. There we go, lovely, tick in the box. Thank you very much. But it was obviously a very much faster than we had anticipated, and therefore, you know, we were very aware we needed to make sure everybody was okay using Teams once they were at home. And so we did a lot of surveys, a lot of engagement, used Hive as our pulse survey tool. We've also got an employee forum where we bring together people representing different parts of the business to discuss issues, challenges, and try and support the well-being really of people working in a very different way. It was a very, you know, rapid change to a new way of working. It's had its positives, it's had its negatives. I think we can all identify those things ourselves. They're different depending on our jobs, our roles, our responsibilities, the way, you know, our lives at home as well. So it's always a balance. It's always a balance, and you know, we've tried to be more proactive about the move into hybrid than how we reacted to the move to virtual. So we've done a lot of surveys now looking at the move to hybrid, and you know, how people like the way that that they are working. And you know, we've done some surveys. 72% of respondents felt that, you know, between 80 and 100% of their role could be carried out away from a traditional office location. And you know, 90% of people would wanted to work flexibly or remotely for at least one day a week going forwards, and over 50% for a few days a week going forwards, leaving about 20%, you know, every other day in an office. It's quite a significant change if you think, you know, where we were 2.5 years ago. You know, definitely within Dorset Council, you know, very much more traditional office-based kind of workforce in the corporate centre, obviously. You know, but to get to that point where we had that significant shift to people feeling that they wanted to continue in that space was massive. So one of the things we got thinking about is how do we move this forwards? And so we held we had a hack essentially with some of our leaders and some of our digital workforce, looking at what people wanted to leave, what people wanted to keep, and you know, how we wanted to take things forwards, which identified there was a bit of a need and a bit of a gap in terms of that support resource that was available for people working in a hybrid way. It's a whole other new way of working, really. You know, we just got used to working virtually, so now we're going to move into the hybrid space. What does that mean? How do I look after me? How do I look after my team? How do I look after, you know, the organisation's needs? And that's kind of what we came to as the output of that hack. Was we needed a new tool, we needed a new way of supporting our people. You know, that hack was, I think it was back in May, June time, I think it was. I want to say now, I can't quite remember now, but there's a lot of water goes on the bridge far too fast these days. But it's you know, it really brought out and brought home a lot of the benefits, a lot of the positives that had kind of come out of the pandemic that people want to hold on to. And one of those that was really, you know, personal to me was about the inclusion aspect of that virtual way of working. You know, I'm registered blind, and for me, the last 18 months has been the most inclusive way of working possible.
Sorry, Pete, I think we might need to go on mute. I can hear somebody. It might be Neil, perhaps. Just as Nick said, just a reminder for everybody to pop on mute. Sorry, Pete. Didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Sorry, I wasn't sure if everyone else could hear that, so thank you. Yes, I say last 18 months for me have been the most inclusive period of my working career. Being registered blind, using Teams has been fantastic. It's been a leveler for me. In the past I'd had to work around situations and presentations and sessions, and now I don't. I engage in real time. So I don't want to lose that. I know I've heard that feedback from a lot of people in the Disability Employee Network we've got within Dorset Council. There are deaf colleagues, there are people with cognitive and mental health issues that like the structure that comes from it. And for me, being able to engage in presentations in real time and meetings and not miss out on things and have to work around them, and for deaf colleagues who can put the subtitles or transcripts up on a meeting and engage in it in real time again, is massively liberating and inclusive. So there are things we want to try and keep, but how do we do that to also bring back some of that humanity and the socializing aspects of the workplace? So that was kind of the challenge we started off with. So that's when we turned to Mel and brought Mel into the hack, and that's where we got some really interesting feedback in that hack session. Mel, do you want to come in on this?
Yeah, thanks, Pete. And I love that story, because really what you're doing is you're really setting the scene for two things that are really important to me, really, to share with everybody. And I think the first thing is that we knew that what the sweet spot of what we were working with here was behavior and mindset shift, right? That's really, really important. And the other thing was, and I think this goes to the kind of, the experimental openness that Dorset have, certainly from our perspective as a supplier, is that they're really okay to experiment and try and test new things. But the differentiation here is between virtual and hybrid. And from a behavioural perspective, we knew that what we didn't want to do is we didn't want to engage and socialise language like we're going back to the office. What's going to happen when we go back to work? Because what that would do is that would trigger old habits, that would trigger old mindset and old behaviours and ways of working. And we wanted to start from a blank sheet of paper. So hybrid meaning, being able to work in different spaces, inclusive of at home, office and anywhere else remote, and also working at different times. So a lot of that was bringing up a lot of uncertainty and uncomfort for a lot of people. And that's really where our starting point was for that hack. And that hack, we thought, was actually going to give us the data that would then help us to create more traditional learning and development interventions, so workshops and some online learning videos and so on and so forth that we could put onto the council's learning management system. But do you know what? We got to that hack and we got some great information from that hack. So we understand what some of the challenges that managers were facing. So they gave us that. So, how do we meet and collaborate with people inclusively when some are in the office and some are at home? How do we keep connected with each other? Things around psychological safety, etc., etc. So we had so many different things that came up in terms of specific data out of that hack. And certainly, one question I have for people that are on today's session is, how many people are themselves looking at hybrid versus virtual? How many of you might be, trying to develop your own hybrid ways of working, hybrid strategies, hybrid manifestos, or learning interventions. So if there's anything around that, please pop it into chat. It'd be really, really good to understand that. But suffice to say, we had a load of data that came out of that. And what we thought we were going to do was we were going to create adult learning interventions. But what came out of it was a nuance of, I need help in the moment. It's not that I want to go onto a program and get everybody sheep dipping, because one of the things that we recognized through hybrid was that it enables everybody to become uniquely their better self in terms of how they work and where they work. And that was something that, is something that I know that Dorset are absolutely wedded to. So it was kind of a bit of a scary moment, because we came together as a design team and we said, this ain't working. You know, we've invested in developing a learning program or learning interventions, learning assets, but that's not what people want. People want something that is going to help them in the moment. They want something which is almost like a virtual buddy and a virtual coach. So what we decided to really do something brave and stopped. And at that time, Lisa Trickey, who was leading the program, got in touch with Hilary, who works with Tom at Tailwind Digital. And we came together. So Adaptive Digital and Tailwind Digital came together, and we basically said to the council that we're willing to do something which is a little bit innovative and a little bit different, and use our data and use our expertise to create something that will allow everybody in Dorset Council, wherever they are, whenever they are, to access information, support and guidance in the moment that they need it, just before they're going into a meeting or just before they're having a one-to-one with someone, as well as if they are looking forward to maybe designing something in the future or wanting to be more open and collaborative, or how do I build transparency across my team? How do I build social capital? All of these things that might be things that we want to look at in the future, giving the ability for that to happen as well. So really that's kind of where the introduction to what we're about to share with you as I hand over to Tom is really a type of learning experience which is a hybrid coach, an online hybrid coach. So Tom, I think that's the best segue into a little bit of a show and tell, if you're happy and ready to come off camera, onto camera and off mute.
Yeah, absolutely. So off mute, on camera. Hang on a second, I'm going to share my screen as well. So sharing a screen. There we go. And let me see if I can get my camera back on. So away we go. That one. Has that worked? Can everybody see me and see my screen?
All good.
Yes.
All good. Okay, excellent. Okay. Thank you very much. So, yeah, some of the things that Mel mentioned there, I just wanted to reiterate. So it's been great working with Dorset because of their approach to developing something new has been very open and experimental. So far, we've spent about 10 days worth of development coming up with the bare bones of a product which will hopefully help solve the problem that we've got of helping people engage more with hybrid working. But this is not the finished article by any means, and we've been working actively between the content, the platform, and we're using Microsoft Teams here. I'll explain a little bit more about that, but also the functionality that we're developing, and we've got a roadmap I can show you in a minute. But just to kind of help frame it to everyone's mind about what we've got so far, we've got an app that lives within Teams. Now that's key because it gives you authentication and security. So everyone can access this, whichever organization you work for. You can install it into Teams and it'll automatically authenticate you. And it'll work whichever organization you're working on. And Delia is messaging me. So there you go, it is in Teams. We've got the ability to look down the various different bits of content, the various ideas and tips that we've got to help people with their sort of hybrid working. And you can click on any of these and it'll load up. Oh, typical. That's my tech demo gremlins here to get me. There we go. It works now. So yes, you can go to any of these and it'll bring up the tip. And these are very bite-sized tips. We're not talking about going on for a sort of quarter of an hour video or an hour-long, learning system. This is, as Mel said, point in time, small sort of information snacks that people can absorb quickly when they're in the moment and they need the help. We've categorized them so people can find out, if they want to find tips about a specific topic, maybe meetings and how do we do meetings. These are all tips related to meetings. And you can also search for them as well. So if you wanted to find out about, if I could spell, psychological safety, then there's a tip here about psychological safety and what you can do to make people feel safe and that sort of thing. Just to sort of emphasize the multi-tenant nature of this, obviously multi-tenant is quite a hard thing to do and test when you're working in one organization, but I do have, I think, somewhere. Maybe I've lost it. No, here it is. So this is Henrietta Muller. She lives in my development tenancy. So this is how I've been able to test that somebody from another organization be able to access this, and Henrietta can work in that same way. She's authenticated, we know who she is, and she's not had to enter a password or anything. It goes in and works smoothly. So as a mechanism for delivering software to multiple organizations at once in a secure way, I think Teams is a really powerful example, and that will be something that we can look at again in the future. So just coming back to my thing, this is something that we're looking at developing now, is the idea of tailoring the learning experience towards something that you're interested in, because there is a lot of content in here and it's growing very quickly. But if I wanted to go and tailor the information that's coming to me, then I can select the different topics that I'm interested in, and that will change the feed of information that comes in.
Tom, do you mind if I just interject there a little bit? So what Tom's just shared with you is something that came out of the hack. So this is how we've used some of the data to translate it directly into this minimum viable product, as it were. And what we recognized was that there were clusters of specific scenarios that managers and leaders were concerned about. So things like burnout, things like back-to-back meeting, things like psychological safety, etc. So what we recognized was there were some levels of interest rather than just having a broad brush kind of go into search. People were coming under these kind of clusters of scenarios. So you can go and search under a topic, a field of interest, as well as go straight in if there's something very, very specific for you.
Thanks, Mel. So just wanted to touch on the roadmap for what we've built so far and what's coming up as well. So at the moment we're at the minimum viable product. Dorset have invested in the product to get it this far, and we've got a little bit more investment as well to sort of do some more things, but it would be very interesting to hear about how a tool like this might be used by other authorities and other organizations as well. So the minimum viable product is hosted and secure. It's a Teams app. It's ready for multi-tenant. We've built in filter and search, and we've got a content authoring environment, which Mel has been using to create all the content for the system so far. And every day I go on here, there's fresh content. So Mel has been frantically working away. I don't know where she finds the time to do it all, but she has been doing. Coming up next, we've got to add some social features. So the idea of being able to thumbs up on content, see who's liked different things. There's possibility of looping that back into, because it's Teams, we can access people's graphs so we can see who they work with. So you might be able to show content which people in your team have liked, and use some smart data like that. We've then got feedback and reporting. So reporting on which tips are getting the most engagement, maybe which ones are not. To the opportunity to give users a chance to feedback about the whole app, and also to give feedback about a specific tip, and then for content authors and managers and leaders involved with the system to respond to individual bits of feedback and have that public. Transparency is really important in any agile development, and we want to build that into the tool so that people can see they fed back on a tip, it wasn't particularly helpful for them, and then we can improve that, or maybe add another tip for a more specific scenario. We want to add in personalization. So I've shown you the start of that work already. where you can sign up and choose the things you're interested in, and the content can then be tailored to your interests and tailored to the things that you like. And also we're looking at the use of proactive notifications to send people via Teams, because we have Teams, so we have the ability to chat to them via a chatbot. We can send them notifications at a schedule that they agree so that they can be given, you know, someone in your team like this, maybe you'd like to have a look at it as well. All of that is, you know, in development, and we'll be working with Dorset to see what works and what doesn't, and this roadmap will almost certainly change along the way. Lastly, we want to have the ability to kind of create user-created content so people can add things in. The thing I wanted to take away from this more than anything is that this is a work in progress, and we're shaping the rest of the backlog as we go. And like any good agile development, we are inspecting and adapting, and the system is already live and already adding value, and we hope to increase that as we go. That's probably the end of my demonstration, Mel, unless you've got anything to add.
No, I think that's great. I guess there's just one thing just for everybody to know, that in each one of these individual tips is the ability for a call to action, so the functionality for a call to action, and that call to action can be to integrate with an existing link or asset within the council. So there might be some you know, videos on the learning management system that they've got themselves that they might want to link to, or an article, but also that ability to link to external assets as well. So I think call to actions as well are really important as part of these tips, so that there's something there that you can go to if you need, or a template that you can use and make it really, really actionable. That's really important. I think, you know, I think the other thing is and I'd love to hear what people's ideas and thoughts are, given what Pete and Tom and I have shared today already. And I know that it's incredibly early days, but, you know, you've had a little bit of a look-see on that roadmap. The key thing for us is, how does it become that coach, you know, that genuine support in the moment when you need it? And I think that's the big kind of hairy, audacious goal for us, because that's the biggest concern that came out of the hack, and is, you know, is constantly coming up for us in terms of what support do we want? We want it in the moment. We want to be able to get what we want immediately, but get that support. So I'm hoping that in that roadmap you might not have got the nuance of, but, you know, it might be a link to potentially getting in touch with somebody as well if you need to speak to somebody. So
Brilliant, thanks.
I'm just bringing myself back in the room. Can I ask everyone to turn on their cameras if they so wish, but definitely to unmute, and let's discuss and question these good people, and maybe if anyone can think about you know, how right, so we have got later on we have got a session being run by Becky from Hull City Council, Senior Transformation Officer, and that's, she's sort of been working on the Future Work Design funded project. It was an MHC, a local digital office funded project. Becky, can you just unmute and just join us?
Yeah, hi Nick.
Hi. So you know, this does, you know, there does seem to be some crossover and some opportunity here, doesn't there?
Yeah, definitely. We have got a very similar area to that on the learning pathways on Teams, what we've embedded. That's a lot of support around the use of Microsoft 365. It's like a Microsoft 365 area. So it has tips around how to use Teams channels, how to chat, how to use the files. And we have got some stuff in there around blended working, but looking at that, we probably could put more within that area around supporting blended working. So although we touch on it, we don't put as much as what this tool in. And also some of the areas what you mentioned around liking areas as well, in terms of thumbs up and actually liking places will help us would help us really to identify the areas where most support's needed. So I think that's a really good tool to have. So I think I'll feed that back into our adoption and change team for Microsoft 365 around whether that's something we could look at. So I like that.
Great stuff. Yeah, cheers. We also had a very specific Microsoft 365 learning support app. And it's interesting really, because the journey that got us to this one was really responding to the feedback we got from that hack, that actually wanted something more than that. It wasn't just about a virtual workshop or another session or another learning module. It was like Mel said, it's that kind of in the moment, I need to know something about how to do hybrid that supports me, an individual in my team, someone's well-being, the kind of slightly broader topics, rather than just the tech, how to use Teams to do the job. It was kind of more about the whole sort of business delivery side of things, in terms of, you know, the people bit of it.
Yeah, and I think what you're alluding to there as well, Pete, is you know, and it's part of you know, digital ways of working and workforce planning, which is around habits. And one of the things that we've realized, and is going to be in the roadmap for this app, is as you saw from Tom's PowerPoint slide, is that push notification. So being able to serve up you know, habit reminders, and to help people to keep to habit, and, you know, and serve them up things that would be of interest to them based on their past usage and their past search criteria of the app. So it becomes more and more of that behavioral shift, as well as kind of coaching support apps. So that's kind of where the roadmap is going to with this one. So I think, you know, there might be some other ideas in there as well, Becky.
Keep forgetting to do that unmute. People are usually quite happy.
Sorry, it's because I'm so used to Teams as well.
But I was going to say, so can I ask Marilyn, can I pick on you, only because I saw you out the corner, you look, not that you look like a Bond villain, but you had a cat all of a sudden on you, and you were, you know, as if you're about to take over, you know, South Wales from where you were sat. But can I just ask you, are Swansea, because obviously Swansea in Wales a fairly significant size council, have you got, is there anything in place for you guys working within the council for hybrid working and support, like we've just seen?
So it's definitely something we're working towards. We don't have anything like this that staff can just turn to at the moment, no. We're in the process of, we're calling it new ways of working. So we're in the process of renewing our agile policy and looking at our new ways of working and what that our future is going to look like. And I almost see this, like you say, it's that culture piece of work, isn't it? It's that human piece of work that we really need to focus on to support our staff, to make sure they're adapting to be fit for the future. So it's definitely something that we're working towards, but we're not at this point yet.
Excellent, thanks, Brian. And what about anybody else? Alison Bellamy.
Hi, I'm from Hounslow Council. We've got a World of Work programme, so all very similar, and we're developing materials as they're requested. Really, there's been a lot of concern from managers, it seems, around hybrid meetings, in particular. Hybrid working, I think people are quite comfortable with, but hybrid meetings, people struggle, and we've obviously got to sort out some of the equipment in the offices to make them better, make them work. No one's really going back into the office just yet, so they're all fully remote, and in many ways that's easier. So I know that there's a lot of nervousness about hybrid meetings in particular. I don't know whether anyone's got material that can be shared easily, or whether we're all duplicating the same stuff.
No, it's fair point, and we will come on to just quickly, Alison. Hefin, you've got your hand up. That's very polite of you. Thank you.
Oh, hi. For Carmarthen Show, we've recently adopted this expression of interest process from the departments. A lot of the ones I've been dealing with recently have been along the lines of Teams guest channels. I don't know if you've ever come across this scenario. So what we've done is they're looking for a sort of collaboration tool without actually understanding what Teams can do for them. But where we're getting stuck is we haven't got enough of a development force to build the forms that they require for their capture. So I'll give you 3 examples that we've dealt with recently. Foster carer teams, we have 120 foster families who need this collaboration tool, but of course there's policy changes and things to be done there, which we're happy to follow up with. The other ones were community integrated nurses. They again needed a collaboration contact tool with each other and a form to produce the prescription for what equipment patients coming out of hospitals would need in their homes. So there's an authorization hierarchy there as well. So we got a bit stuck there. However, we've just left them on these collaboration channels for now. And the final one was, if I can remember, yeah, we've got a training team within one of the technical services areas. Again, they're after sort of training attendance sheets and things like chainsaw training and that level of work. And again, they're in this collaboration channel, but again, we're stuck with these forms. So I don't know if anybody's getting stuck at that level in terms of keeping the teams in contact with each other, because we're finding a lot of solo working at the moment, and we feel that Teams guest channels is the way forward to keep them all connected. I don't know if that makes sense. Thank you.
Cheers, Hefin. Do any of our Tom? Do you have an answer to that?
I'm just going to ask a follow-up question. So, are you talking about? Sorry, Hefin. Is it people both within the authority and outside of the authority trying to work together? Is that what you're describing?
Yeah.
So there are some things that you need to do at a tenant level to get teams to operate in that way, and there might be some IT security hurdles that you need to cross to get that working. But there's definitely so I'm in a shared team channel with Dorset, so myself and the folks at Dorset and Mel from, so that's 3 organisations all working together. So absolutely teams can do all of that. But I think for a lot of organisations, when they first rolled out Teams, because they did it in a hurry, their default was anything that's even slightly insecure, we'll turn it off. So there may be some a chance to revisit that decision and get things turned back on.
Thanks, Tom. No, I should have made it clear. We've got guest channels up and running. It's working perfectly fine, and it is fit for purpose. It's just the engagement is difficult. We set them up and get them running, and with all the best will in the world, it's like leading the horse to water and making them drink. You know, this is the problem we're having. They cannot see what is actually capable for them within Teams. That they're looking to buy systems all the time, where it's right there in their faces. So this is it's my job to sell it, but it's almost impossible at the moment.
So, I mean, in terms of adoption, this is probably something that Mel could respond to. But from my personal experience, I was at Nottinghamshire County Council until March this year, and we had a couple of projects that we decided we wanted to use Teams. And very early on, we decided that the way to maximise that was to ban emails about the project. So any communication between the team members had to be done via Teams, and it only takes a week of that, and everyone, as soon as you receive an email from somebody about a project, you just copy and paste it into Teams, and then everyone can see it, everyone can chat, and it changes the whole mindset. I don't know if that's as easy to do with external partners, probably not, but I think that would be an approach. Is let's agree we're not going to email about this. We're going to move to the more modern technology stack.
I agree. Externally, the public are very much involved on board, because they're getting the information that they need.
Yeah.
It's the internal departments that they're the ones requesting this change, but they're not enforcing it when they're given the tool to follow.
I was going to pass over to Mel as well there.
Yeah,
I was going to pass over to Mel as well, Hefin, that it does sound like you've got the tech, you've got the process, but it's the people change that needs to be focused on there. So yeah, some teams work and some don't. So Mel.
Absolutely. And Heaven, I think, you know, what Tom just said is really, really good advice to you from an adoption perspective, but there's multiple things that you can do. And obviously I don't know the intricacies of your situation, but we always look at minimum viable shift, right? So we always look at, it's not how much you do, it's how little you do, because as soon as you give choice to people, you know, if they're already uncertain, you give them choice and they're going to be a rabbit in the headlights. So sometimes it's really good to pull back a wee bit and not necessarily give them too much. The other thing that I think, and Dorset are exemplary at this, is champions, is, you know, how you use champions to embed and to support accelerated adoption. And then the final thing that I would say, Heaven, is leadership. It's role modeling. Time and time again for us, you know, that the missing link in so much around change of behaviour and adoption is down to leadership, role modeling, because culture shifts by looking at. If we can't see the essence of change there, then are we going to trust it? So, you know, I think there's a few things that you might be able to look at, and I know that's a generic answer to you, but hopefully there's a wee bit of value in there for you.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. So we are going down the digital champion route for this, and it may come down to Tom's idea of the forced usage rather over email usage.
Encouraged.
Yeah, okay. Go down there. We try not to be too heavy-handed with it, but but what we're forming at the moment is this methodology for the whole authority. They don't quite get the idea yet, but I think once the councillors are on board, it should filter through them.
Sorry, Nick, before... Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, what you've said there, Heaven, is really important. So, you know, once we get the councillors on board, it should filter down from then. As long as that's not just them saying yes, as long as that is genuine usage and role modeling, that's the tweak you need, that's the pivot to get adoption. And I think one of the other things that I'm really impressed with that I've seen and experienced through Dorset is, once there is a strategy or a change like this, a way of working, a new way of working, is allowing the openness and the flexibility of teams to create their own manifesto. So very, very, very generic principles that each team can then create their own manifesto around, so it becomes meaningful for you. So that's another thing that you might want to think about. Sorry, Nick, I know that I'm probably...
No, not at all. We can, you know...
I just had one more quick one, Nick, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So there was a few people there that mentioned sharing and you know, sharing ideas. Yeah. One of the reasons we built this in Teams is specifically for that. The way a Teams app works, you don't have to install anything physically on your premise. You're basically giving permission for that Teams app to be installed into your Teams environment. Your users will suddenly have it appear in their sidebar, or be able to access it from the apps button on the sidebar, and it's ready to share. All the content is there. So if there are other organizations that sort of would, you know, like what they've seen today and want to further that conversation, then it'd be great to hear from you. And myself and Mel are keen to explore that with other authorities alongside Dorset.